Oh there. Hopefully, can you all hear me? I want to make sure that you can all hear me before we actually get started, because this log report's a pretty big one. Viper can't hear me? That's okay. Alright. You can't spell? You wish you didn't? Sal, you don't actually have to be here, man. You can leave. Alright, let's get the usual parts of the org report sorted out. Alright, State of Star Citizen news. We've got Invictus Week running from the 19th through to the 30th of May. Outside of that, it was just the April report for the Squadron 42 being posted to the comlink. Nothing else really interesting happening. Patches for live, it's still 3.18.2, and for the PTU, we're in open PTU. So we could be seeing live for 3.19 getting pushed out soonish. Who knows? I think CIG's just kind of throwing a dart at a board, and wherever it lands, that's the date. Events, there's no events running in Star Citizen. Jumptown finished earlier this week. Alright, target activity. Usual places, no real change. State of Mongrel Squad hasn't changed. Training focus is still leading snare and boarding simulations, and we're still out there looking for cargo haulers. Our current tally is 56,686,388 Alpha UEC of 100 million, adding just under 1 million Alpha UEC since last week's report. The Org's YouTube channel is currently sitting at 10,272 subs, adding 50 since last week. Still at war with Frontier Consolidated. I didn't even change the title to State of Mongrel Squad. That's alright. Still at war with Frontier Consolidated. We're still monitoring them passively. Alright. I'll change the Z banner. Org news. I want to say congratulations to the latest FCP member to join, Metatron. Congratulations. Good work on making it through, mate. Reminders, OCX is running a piracy event for the Mongrel Core, same time every week, and I'll actually be able to start it on time this time. So yeah, come along. Rated group exercise currently is still planned for, however, due to recent events, that may change. Alright. Pretty much burned through this org report, and we're up to the last, to my soapbox. Now, first thing I want to do is apologize to the NA guys. I know they would have wanted to be here for this particular part of the org report, but unfortunately, real life's got me bloody by the balls at the moment. I work in the mornings, and by the time I get home from work, it's pretty much way past a lot of your bedtime, and I don't really expect you guys to stay up past midnight just for an org report. And to ask questions. I did jump into comms earlier today for those who were just finishing up their events to have a quick chat with them. So, you know, I did get to talk to some of those guys there. During the weekend, though, I will be able to do some more catch-ups for those who want that to happen. Alright. So I don't know if you guys noticed, but there was a breakaway group from Mongrel Squad. An organization was created called Ask Who. Now, I'm going to be very fucking matter of the fact with these particular points, because I've been going through this churn cycle with it, and I've got some opinions, but I'll lay down the facts for everybody. Alright, so what happened? We've had 15 people leave Mongrel Squad. Why? There's two reasons. A disagreement with how I run the org, and friends following their friends. What are we going to do? Well, right now I'm looking for a new SO for the North American Raider group. And we'll either find a new JO for one of the North American Raider teams, or we'll consolidate the JO-less Raider team into the others. Then we're going to move on, keep moving forward, and we're going to keep pirating. Now, there's a lot more to what I've just spoken about. There is a list of names as well, which I'll be attaching to this org report. I'm not going to read them out now because apparently my information is outdated and there's more. So yeah, I'm going to move straight into the questions, and I know most of it's going to dominate this particular thing, particular subject. Now, we had one of the NA guys drop their question, so in the last week's org report. So I'm going to start with that one first, and then I'll start taking questions from you guys. Alright. There is 2, 3, 6, 7, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. 23. But Bio spent a lot of time punching this out, so I'm going to go through them all. Now, he was present, well, he kind of showed up. Pretty sure he showed up like halfway through when I was talking with the guys. I can't remember. We actually had some NA guys drop in whilst I was talking with the remnants of the Raider teams who were finishing up their ops for the night. Alright, so we'll be starting with training dogs. What specific objects were given to the FCP that were not satisfied by materials that were provided in response to the requests? What specific objectives were given to the FCP that were not satisfied by the materials that were provided in response to the request? I'm not going to be able to answer that one off the top of my head. They were expected to create certificates for the initial start would be for Prospect, so from Prospect to Mongrel. Documentation on drills. And I know there's more, but I once again can't answer all of that off the top of my head. What I may end up doing is coming back to some of these questions as well, mate, and answering them here. How were these instructions delivered to the FCP? Written and verbal. What feedback was received from the FCP in response to the instructions given? From my understanding, they were going to give him a go. We got feedback. We got some documentation. Feedback was given verbally, and we continued forward. Now, when we talk about the FCP in this regard, you got to understand that the FCP is divided into two groups. So we got the EU FCP and the NA FCP. We didn't have as much issues trying to get documentation out of the EU FCP as we did out of the NA. Like, that's being honest. We did get documentation out of them. However, it wasn't sufficient. There was a good baseline, but I needed more detail in them. And the reason for that is that The intent is to set up documentation so that it can be used as a reference by other people that are not FCP. So I can't sit there and tell you exactly what was said, but that's the general gist of it. Alright, moving on to the next section. FCP expectations and role. Setting aside the org perception of the role, what are the expectations from administration for this role? So the FCP, when it was first started, was to create a group that would hyper-focus on flight combat and improve their skills. Like, they didn't have to do piracy ops, they could be their own little group that would go off and do flight combat training, and that's all they were expected to do, you know, live, eat, breathe, fucking, you know, everything flight combat. That's what they were supposed to do. And they were supposed to take those skills and knowledge and distill it down for the org to consume in an attempt to improve the org's flight combat skill level. Now, that has been the intent for the FCP from the start. I've heard people say other things or have other impressions of it. That's the intent for it from the start. And that started in 2020. So, and there's documentation where I've actually listed that out from that long ago, from when it was first started. I have to go track it down now because it's, believe it or not, we actually have a lot of different documentation. I've gone through many iterations of different stuff, thrown stuff away. I need to make sure that I've still got it. But from the start, that's been its thing. And it actually started when we were still on Discord. Next question. Do you feel that the org perception of the role matches administration's expectations of the role? No. There were some issues that I noticed. One was the reliance of the FCP just taking control of flight combat operations, which was okay in my books, but a lot of people were starting to just go, oh, FCP's here, we just hand it all over to them. And it's like, it's great that we had that asset, but it was becoming a crutch to rely on. And I don't like that. Realistically, we should be able to have raider teams format themselves and conduct themselves in a way where they can actually go out and fight in flight combat and be able to hold their own. That said, a lot of people would just go, oh, the FCP's here, just hand it over to them. You got the job done. People were still happy with that. But that wasn't the entirety of what the FCP was supposed to do. It was something that they could do, but I noticed that it was starting to become more of a crutch. I never took that particular job away from them though, but I made it clear that this got made clear to the SOs that I wasn't a big fan of the FCP being used as a flight, as a crutch for raider teams and raider groups to just use to go, oh, this is out of my depth, I'm just going to hand it over to the FCP guys for the flight combat stuff. It's like, realistically, we're better off as an organization if raider teams build up that experience base. Next question. If additional responsibilities exist beyond combat specialization, are these responsibilities communicated to new FCP applicants in full? You'd have to ask them. That's part of one of the things that the FCP is the FCP admins are supposed to do. That said though, under member information, there is a blurb about what the FCP and the MCP is about. There's also about the logistics wing and the intelligence wing as well. That's only available to those who are full members because only full members can actually join. That's in the members forums and it's new member information. Now, additional responsibilities, and coming back to this one, beyond combat specialization. Yes, like, I re-rolled the FCP into a training arm because that's really what it was getting used as anyway. So I just updated the description to reflect that. Now, whether or not the guys like that or not, it didn't seem to faze them. I didn't get any feedback saying that from any of them, saying, hey, what'd you do? I don't like this. You know, I didn't think that was supposed to do this. The thing though is like, it was kind of the FCP's thing the whole time, although the original intent with the FCP was distill the information, disseminate it to the org. The JOs would then take that information and then develop, you know, training plans and deliver lessons with the help of the FCP, being there to mentor them through the process. Problem with that was that we just weren't getting to that point where we could get the information from the FCP to the JOs in a format that the JOs could take control. So FCP stepped in as an interim solution until we could actually build up, you know, the certificates and, you know, the documentation that we would need to be able to just give to the JOs to reference so that they could run drills without the FCP always being present. Which kind of segues into the next section. Training materials in future. What specific plans have been set in place to satisfy administration's requirements for training materials moving forward? Are there clear requirements and timelines? Is format and expected delivery of future materials specified? Alright, first part. What specific plans have been set in place to satisfy administration's requirement for training materials moving forward? The certificate system. We also have an organization wiki that is in possession of the officers of the org at the moment. However, it seems like we've stagnated on that. Pretty much, we have a lot of knowledge and information floating around Mongrel Squad, and we're trying to document it and put it all in one location. There's a template for how we do lesson plans, which some of their lesson plans have actually followed, but we haven't got all those lesson plans set out. Is format and expected delivery of future materials specified? Well, I'm going to assume you're talking about how we've templated our lesson plans and what we're expecting, you know, like how we take that information out of the wiki and deliver it to people, or deliver it to our members. And this is one of those things where it's like, once we kind of already got the structure in place and it's more or less standardizing how we teach things. Realistically, training in QED should be the same across all time zones, irrespective of, you know, what lesson, who's running the lesson, and that's the expected delivery. The thing is though, is like, those lesson plans are still being done verbally. You know, like, a lot of what we do at the moment is still based on tribal knowledge. You know, it's one JO passes it down to the next JO, you know, like passes it down to their members, and then those members practice it enough, and then if they decide to become a JO, then they're teaching, you know, QED. And whilst we do have some reference material that is floating around, it's still dispersed. We want to co-locate it. So, is it specified? Not 100%, because I've already got the format in place. Often those who are great at doing specialized tasks are not great at teaching, or just don't want to teach those tasks. Has management considering creating an embedded instructor focused role to work with the FCP, MCP or other specialized organizations to coordinate the creation of materials with the assistance of subject matter experts without burdening said subject matter experts with admin work? Yes, hence the reason why we created the FCP and MCP admin roles, although we don't have any MCP admins, but that hasn't stopped the MCP members from stepping up and doing, you know, the creation of documentation and running of training. That said though, like, the role has been updated so to stipulate that the role is a training one. Like, you're stepping up to take on a job for the org. And that's something that I think kind of gets lost on people, that it's a position of responsibility and there is prestige that is associated with it because you have to earn it and you're considered the best in the org at that particular skill set. But at the same time, you're there to, conduct a job. You're there to help better the org. That's the only reason why those programs exist. And that's why they're called programs and not groups. Because they're not supposed to be a, little faction of our combat pilots that are just there to be on call to go and fight battles for us. Because if that was the case, I might as well just make the entire org like that. FCP members that wanted to pursue this direction could do so, but not be required to perform this function. Not sure, that's more a statement. It's not really a question, but one of the things that I see about this, FCP members that wanted to pursue this direction could do so, but not be required to perform this function. That's completely contradictory to what the FCP is about. Like, I understand the point, but the reason for the existence of the FCP now is to train others and, perform the other stuff as well. All FCP members could be encouraged to record combat and training sessions to provide raw material, regular meetings, or other coordination with instructors to provide material of interest. So, they were. Like, I understand, this is one of those things where it's like, they were encouraged to do that. Some of them did it, some of them didn't. Like, at the end of the day, there was only so much encouraging that you can do with someone before it's like, look, why are you even here? If the feedback that has been received indicates that live one-on-one training is the best method of delivery for most flight combat experts, would it be reasonable to consider shifting immediate focus to structured supervised training, sign-up procedures, and recommended schedules as an alternative to documentation, mass lecture, and self-practice? No. And the reason for that is that I want there to be a standard, and I don't want it to be subjective. I want it to be objective. It's like, you can do this particular skill set, and it doesn't matter if the person who's assessing you likes you or not. If they see you doing that thing, you get the tick. And that's the problem with using a subjective method, is that if somebody doesn't like you, it doesn't matter, how well you do. If they're the one assessing you, you're going to fail. But if they're your friend, you're going to pass, and you may not be of that quality that's required to pass, but they're like, oh, well, you're close enough, and I like you. So, I'll nudge you over the line. That's not good for the org. The former creates toxicity amongst members. The latter reduces our effectiveness as a group. And it creates this mentality of, favoritism being shown, which then leads to resentment. So, I'm not in agreement of doing that, which is why I've pushed in the direction that I have when it comes to, trying to create that documentation and standardize, how we assess people. Alright, moving on to former and current leadership lost. Many current and former leadership roles left the org during this recent exodus. Can you tell us why you believe this particular segment left? They don't agree with how I'm running the org. They didn't feel like they were being listened to. And, they got to a point where they were like, well, if I don't like the way that, if they don't like the way that I'm running the org and they don't feel like they can get anywhere with it, they decided to go and make their own org. And that's just it. Like, that's the reality of it. That's what I've been told by, you know, the ones who were willing to message me. Some of them weren't. Some of them didn't message me. Some of them messaged other people. And I'm getting, you know, information from them. How is received feedback handled at the upper levels that runs contrary to existing or desired policy? Well, it's discussed. So, Nick, or it used to be Dobbs, would bring topics to me and we would discuss it. And I would, you know, listen to what was actually being said, and I would make a decision on whether or not we're going to, you know, consider doing it or, you know, disregard it. And if I disregarded something, then I would give a reason why. Do you feel that all members of an equivalent leadership tier are given equal weight of consideration at the senior and administration levels regardless of specialization, region, or other factors? Yes. Even though they may not feel like it, they actually are. I don't think there's ever been a time where Nick or Dobbs had not approached me about an issue that they felt didn't warrant my attention. So if they felt it warranted my attention, they would approach me about it without hesitation. I've also made it clear to the entire org that you can communicate with me. I'm just a DM away. You can send me a message. And I get messages regularly from everyone. You know, I get feedback on specific things. You know, I get, you know, people notifying me that something's going on. You know, their thoughts, questions, queries. You know, I get all that. I always try and make the effort to get back to people as quickly as I can. I'll tell you this now. I'm actually trying to check my phone, like Gilded on my phone less, especially when I'm at work. Because I have this habit where I'll check Gilded on my phone, I'll see messages, I'll read them, and I'll be like, alright, I'll respond to this when I get home because it requires a, you know, lengthy message and I'm working. And then I get home and, you know, I'll have like a few other messages and I'll start responding to those, and then, you know, a week later I realize when I'm scrolling back through my messages when I'm at home on my PC that, you know, I missed someone. I'll respond to them and I'll apologize and, you know, give them the answer that they were looking for, you know, like try and help them out with, you know, their issue. Alright. Moving on. Social Hub. Does TeamSpeak have text, image, and embedded file social capabilities equivalent to Discord or Gilded? It has text, image, I'm not 100% sure on. I think it's actually going to be client dependent. TeamSpeak 5 is a new client, which technically everybody can get access to now because they ended up posting a code that we could all use on their Twitter. So I believe that one allows you to do embed images. Embedded file social capabilities equivalent to Discord or Gilded. I'm not sure about the file stuff. I'm pretty sure it can do some files. But this is one of those things where it's like, for TeamSpeak, the focus of that is purely because of its VoIP capabilities. So I'll go on to the next one, even though it's like, technically, it's kind of like 2 out of 3 it's got. Next question, if no, will we be expected to operate with Gilded and add TeamSpeak to our running applications? Unfortunately, yes. TeamSpeak will purely be for VoIP, and Gilded would be for everything else until we're able to migrate away from Gilded. That said though, some of the guys, you know, like, this has been an ongoing discussion pretty much since I made the decision to go to TeamSpeak. So, like, points were brought up about, you know, going to Discord, and I couldn't refute some of them, like the streaming capability, being able to stream directly from, you know, a VoIP channel. You know, Gilded doesn't do that. TeamSpeak certainly doesn't, although they have mentioned in a Twitter post that, you know, they're aiming to implement it, but the TeamSpeak 5 client has been in beta for 3 years now, so I wouldn't hold my breath. That said though, you can use the TeamSpeak 3 client, which is, you know, a bit more limited in terms of those extra social features that you expect from Discord or Guilded. But, you know, in terms of like VoIP and control and all of that sort of stuff, when it comes to VoIP, like, it leaves Discord and Guilded in the dust. Alright, it's consideration given to the fact that using Guilded and or TeamSpeak represents a barrier to entry that may be thinning the pool of applicants. Yes and no. This is another point that I've discussed with the SOs before, in that it's kind of a blessing and a curse. It's a curse in the fact that people look at Guilded and they're like, oh, I don't want to use that. And then they go, oh, well, I'm not going to apply. It's a blessing in the sense that we have people thinking like that, and if they're not willing to, you know, come across to using a platform that we're using, you know, like getting them to comply with, you know, following our directions, or getting them to, you know, pirate the way that we're trying to pirate, is probably going to be a bit more difficult. You know, if Discord is the barrier because we're not using Discord, and that's, you know, a huge, you know, blocker to them. It's like, you know, are we really missing much because we're a piracy organization first? Like, Discord, I understand, is a large platform, but, you know, it's one of those things where it's like all those pools of applicants, you know, they get processed. The JOs are there going over those applications that we receive on the public server. I've given them a list of parameters to try and make their jobs easier, so that, like, if, you know, a question doesn't get answered, or, you know, certain parameters aren't met, you know, they can just can the application straight away and either redirect to the auxiliaries, or, you know, just cut them away completely. But we've still had, you know, over, I'd say, 1,300 applications to join this org since moving to Guilded, which was at the end of 2020. I can guarantee if we stayed on Discord, it just would have been explosive. We had a bot that was handling it, and I'm pretty sure our bot would have died. And that's the problem. Like, it's a blessing and a curse. You know, there's not really, you know, either or on that. But yes, it was considered. And as I said, blessing and a curse. Does administration, or do you specifically feel that the social hub direction Mongrel Squad is taking meets the needs and desires of the members? Is the latter a consideration or a non-factor? So there's been, like, I'm going to answer this question because I think you're talking about, like, how we've got Guilded set up, and that we'd have a public server and a private server and different server groups representing, you know, different areas where you can chat, different topics, or, you know, things like that. I would say for me, it's doing everything that I need it to do. For everyone else, I know that a lot of people aren't happy with how I've got things structured. And this is one of those scenarios where it's like, I like to try and prepare things for the future as much as possible. And if I can reduce the strain of change by introducing, you know, things slowly, then I'll do that. And the structure of Guilded is one of those things. Like, the idea of using raider groups, for example, and the separation of the org into its region-based raider groups, it's not done by accident. Like, it's to compartmentalize information. It's done to allow raider teams to be able to talk and discuss things amongst themselves without having to worry about, you know, a flood of conversation amongst the rest of the org. But then the raider group level discussions can also happen. The unfortunate, you know, reality that we're facing right now is that raider groups aren't as important to piracy for now. And, you know, like, every time I'm looking for opportunities to utilize them and, you know, start getting the org used to, you know, operating in, for lack of a better term, a miniature organization. You know, it's like an org inside of an org. And I've done my best to try and, you know, allay people's fears about losing connections with each other. Like, we've still got the main server group, we've still got all these, you know, additional channels, and I've heard complaints about there being too many channels, and it's like, all right, but then, you know, later I'll get complaints about, you know, people feeling disconnected because they can't talk to each other, and it would be better if we had more channels, and I'm just sitting there like, fuck, what, you know, can't fucking win. But, you know, it is a consideration, and at the end of the day, when I'm making these decisions, I'm not only making decisions based on, you know, the feelings of individuals now, but also the feelings of individuals in the future. Like, Mongrel Squad is going to continue to grow, even with the most recent event, you know, where we've had, you know, a bunch of members leave. We're going to continue marching forward. You know, time keeps moving forward, so do we. And, you know, it's part of the growth, you know, growing pains. But if I can lessen growing pains, you know, when we start operating in raider groups, so assigning a raider group to a specific, you know, system, for example, Pyro, they're going to need their own, you know, channel that they can not only talk to their raider teams with, but also their raider group. Because it's unreasonable to expect the SO to then go into each raider team's channel to tell them the same thing. So it's better to have a raider group channel for them. But the other raider groups don't need to know what they're talking about all the time. And that's the main focus. Like, those raider groups are really only for when we're operating as, you know, a raider group. That's what the channels are for the raider teams. That's when they're operating as a raider team. Or, you know, preparing as a raider team. If you want to talk about, you know, other stuff to do with Star Citizen or other games, I've created server groups and channels for those specific topics so that you can do that. And you don't lose that connection that people are afraid of losing with the org. There's not much that I can really, you know, do to satisfy everybody on that front. You know, I can create those channels, and then somebody will complain that there's too many channels. So I get rid of those channels, and then some people, you know, will complain that, you know, I'm removing the ability to communicate amongst people. You know, I'm stuck in the middle of making these decisions, so, you know, at that point it's like, who do I listen to? Me. I will listen to me, and I will make a decision. And some people are just not going to like it, and I have to live with that, and they're going to have to live with that too. Because in an organization, any group, there's always going to be somebody that isn't happy with a decision that is made. So I'm going to end up making a decision that I feel is the best for the org. Some people may not like that, they may not agree with it. But it is what it is. I've made it clear to the org many times, you know, about, you know, who's in charge, and that there's always going to be a decision made, and that, you know, at the end of the day, I'll have the last say in a decision being made that has to do with Mongrel Squad. Anything else outside of Mongrel Squad, I don't have control over that. Alright, debrief. What lessons can we take away from this to prevent future schisms? This is a pretty big, like, this particular question, it's a pretty big one. And it requires me to actually go into detail about, you know, events that led up to this. And I mean, in this whirlwind of, you know, talking with officers, people DMing me, you know, like sitting there, you know, thinking through what's actually happened, reviewing, you know, text channels, going through and reading through what was written by these people who decided to leave, looking for where like we could improve, getting feedback about what others are thinking. And I'm just going to be real with you, is like there's nothing. Like, it just got to the point where these people, it did not matter what I was going to do, they were not happy. They were looking for, the ones who left because they weren't happy with the decisions that I was making. Unless I did exactly the things that they wanted done to the way that the specifications that they wanted it done, they were never going to be happy. That's it. Like, and when I looked at what they wanted done, or how they wanted to do things, it wasn't satisfactory to me. It's not good enough for the org. So I went, no, and I pushed back. And I know people don't like that, but I'm always thinking about the org. Like, I don't want to create extra documentation. I don't want to create extra fucking work for people. But I also don't want to put people in a position where they've got to fucking crawl up somebody's ass to be able to pass an assessment. I don't like that sort of grading system. That's why I don't want a subjective grading system. That's why, like, a big pain point that was being presented to me consistently over the years is when it comes to training and the difference in standards. And some prospects getting through in other, raider teams, if they were a part of a different one, they wouldn't make the cut. The different standards that, are still, and it's still rolling around in this org. Because we haven't established the baseline still. And part of the reason why is because there's this, pulling to and fro about this whole idea of documentation being created and, being in this org feeling like a second job. And, I want to try and do my best to make sure it doesn't feel like the second job. But if you take on a position of responsibility, that does mean that you're going to have to do some extra work. If you want the recognition, you're going to have to do some extra work. And at the end of the day, you should be doing it because you want to do something for the org. If you don't have the capacity to do it, you don't have to. Nobody has to do anything that they don't want to do in this org. But we have a standard that we expect people to achieve. It's still a little bit skew-whiffed in places, but it's still there. Like, there's still this collective agreement on, like, what we would expect a prospect to achieve. But after that, it starts getting murky. My goal is to try and remove that murkiness, to make it clear and provide pathways of progression to our members so that we aren't in this position where you've got to crawl up somebody's ass to impress them so that they pass you. And the fact of the matter is that there are people, some of the guys who ended up leaving, they wanted it to be more, less documentation, more just getting in there and doing it, like we'll make judgment calls and things like that. It's like, it just doesn't work. It's not good enough. Because all that it has to, just needs to come down to one person that they don't like, they're never going to pass. And I don't know about you guys, I don't want to be in a fucking org like that. I won't run an org like that. And if people have a problem with that, and they don't like the fact that I'm putting that measure in, or I'm trying to standardize things by creating a baseline through documentation, then they have every right to leave. Because I'm not going to budge on that. What immediate action is being done by administration following this exodus? Well, currently I've taken on the role of acting SO of the NA rated group until we're able to find a replacement. if we find one. Trying to come to a decision on whether or not we're going to collapse the Raiderless, the JO-less Raider team, or we try and find another JO for it. Right now, the Raider teams in the NA time zone are actually quite light. A portion of the people who left came from the FCP and MCP, so not all of it came from the NA Raider group. So whilst they did lose members, they didn't get completely gutted, not as bad as what people think. Alright, this last one. Is there a possibility of mending this split? Potentially, with some of them, like the people who followed their friends, I can't blame them for that. You know, they had people that they like playing with a particular way, the banter and, you know, the group of friends that they wanted to play with. I can't fault them for following them. But there's others there that, you know, probably aren't going to be welcome back in Mongrel Squad. Like, I'm seeing messages that have been thrown around and they're coming from these former members, and, like, for lack of a better term, they're telling outright lies. They're using hyperbole to convince people of other intentions, you know, making accusations without proof. And the thing about this is like, we don't know, like, I don't know, you know, unless people tell me about these messages. I know that, you know, this breakaway group is, targeting our talent, you know, because they're not only targeting the talent, but they're also like friends with them too. Hey, come over here. You don't have to deal with, you know, all the bureaucracy, you know, like agents turning bloody Mongrel Squad into like a bureaucratic, you know, system like med runners. That's one. You know, you don't have to be a part of Agent's streamer org. It's another. So, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, it's possible with some, but not with all. And, you know, my philosophy on people being in Mongrel Squad, and it comes down to, you know, like, the first things that I put in the manifesto, you know, you're joining me, I'm not joining you. It's to set a clear expectation that if you're not enjoying being in Mongrel Squad because of decisions that I'm making, you know, don't try and stick it out and make it toxic for yourself. You know, like, move on. You know, go out there, look. I don't want people to be miserable in Mongrel Squad. That's not what this is about. I want you to find the fun in, you know, what you're doing. If it's if Mongrel Squad's offering that, then yeah, you know, you're more than welcome here, so long as you can meet, you know, the standard that we're trying to operate at. But, you know, if you do meet that standard, but you don't like the way that things are, and you think that you know better, and you want to do better, and, you know, I'm not listening, apparently, or I'm not doing, you know, things the way that you want me to, and it just doesn't feel like you're getting anywhere, you know, like, all you're doing is hurting yourself by sticking around. That said, like, I am still willing to listen to people. You know, like, I hear people's ideas all the time. The SOs tell me everything. You know, if you have an issue or you have a, you know, idea, they will pass it on to me. Sometimes it's not immediate, but normally it gets to me within 24 hours. And I'll give my response. There's not much more, like, you know, that we can do. You know, that said, like, anybody can contact me, anybody can DM me. Like, I do this bloody stream report. I moved away from the written one because I realized that I needed to maintain a connection with the org. You can ask questions if you're not going to be able to attend, and I'll answer them. I give them priority over the, you know, answers that show up in those who are here live. But at the end of the day, like, you know, I make decisions. That's part of the role that I've taken on as a leader. It would be, I don't know, like one of my many sayings is be the type of leader that you would follow. And as far as I'm concerned, you'd be a pretty piss poor leader if you couldn't make decisions. Even if it's not the popular one, even if you're going to piss people off, even if it's going to make you look like an arsehole. Like, as far as I'm concerned, like, I'm just trying to be the type of leader that I would want to follow. And some people, like that. Some people don't. They want to be heard more, and they would hope for a more democratic approach. If I feel like, something needs to go to a vote to the org, I'll put it to a vote to the org. I'll ask the senior officers. I'll ask the junior officers. I'll ask anybody that I think has relevant input to a specific initiative or idea or problem. But, like, at the end of the day, a decision is going to need to be made on something. So I'll make sure that I'm the one that makes it, even if it's not the popular one. Some people don't like that, and yeah. In this case, I think this went toxic. People tried, sticking it out for as long as they could, thinking that it was going to change. Putting themselves into this hyperbolic, feedback loop of toxicity that they weren't going to get what they wanted, and it caused them to break away and form their own org. And the thing is like, I really hope, that they find the fun that they're looking for, even, after some of the things that they've said. Because I didn't make Mongrel Squad to make people miserable. Not internally, anyway. Fuck Care Bears. Sorry, how the hell did you put up that text there and make my screen go blurry? Mate, it was a huge dump of questions there, but, I do appreciate you spending the time and writing them all out. Like, I know what it's like to write huge fucking documents like that, and, yeah, I appreciate the time and effort, mate. And that's why I went through to answer them for you. Alright, now, pretty much, I know guys were asking questions in the chat, but I'm going to get you guys to ask them again, because the chat moved pretty quickly, so everything that was said by Sorial after his questions thing there, that's what I'll go from. So, sorry in advance if you asked a question and I didn't answer it. Actually, I should probably scroll down here. Okay, there's no more questions there. Alright, from you guys here in the chat, that's live. Alright, Anta asks, there were no visible signs of any of this happening prior to No-Lats leaving. Was any of the SOs or yourself informed of their discontent so it could be addressed? Yes, in terms of individuals, it was one of those situations where it was like, when you look back at it, there was kind of hints at this sort of thing happening. Gluttony decided to step down as FCP admin, and we wanted to know what he wanted to do next, if he wanted to be a JO or of a raider team, if he wanted to just step back into veteran, and he was going to step back into veteran, and or he was going to leave and create his own org. We're kind of expecting him to make the decision when we swapped him over with React, but it seems like he went to veteran and then decided to move on from the org. There was some issues in terms of and I'm not a big fan of talking about people who aren't present to defend themselves either. So when I'm talking about Gluttony, I'm trying to be more matter of the fact here. He didn't feel like his He didn't feel like what he was putting across was being listened to and considered. He didn't feel like he was getting actionable feedback. And the thing was that he did get actionable feedback. It's just, I don't think it was the type of feedback that he wanted. I think he was hoping that, you know, what he had done was sufficient and that he'd be able to continue moving forward. And the process of doing this documentation is, I'm after a level of quality to it and certain points to be hit, you know, in terms of like the certificates. I want to try and put it on a scale as opposed to, you know, it just being tick and flicks. So, you know, single checkbox. Did you, you know, can you do up your shoelaces? Yes or no? It's like, I want to scale there. So it's like, can you do your shoelaces in a bow knot? Yes. Can you do your shoelaces up in a bloody fancier knot? Yes. Or, you know, like such and such can't bloody find their shoes, let alone tie them. And it scales from, you know, like whether or not they can't perform the task all the way through, they're actually doing better than what, you know, we expect them to perform at. Now, there's some more information with regards to discontent. Nolat leaving was not because he was discontented with the org, as far as I'm aware. It was more or less he just wanted to, you know, find, for lack of a better saying, find himself, find, you know, what he was looking for. You know, he felt like what he wanted out of Star Citizen had moved beyond just piracy operations. So, you know, he decided to move on. The words that I'm hearing about, you know, some of the others is that they just didn't like the way that I was running the org, that I wasn't listening to them, that it was becoming too bureaucratic, that I was trying to turn it into my own streaming org. You know, Mongrel Squad's turning into a blob org. It's starting to feel more like a job than a game. And a lot of that, you know, is aimed, you know, blame is aimed at me. Unfortunately, if people are at that point, I don't think there's really much more that I can do. Especially if it's based on them presenting me to do, you know, them presenting an idea to me, or, you know, something that they think that I should do for the org, and me shooting it down, and them not being, you know, them not being willing to accept that response. The thing is that it could also be a compounding issue where it's just, you know, death by 1,000 paper cuts, and they eventually start bleeding out, and they just go, you know what, fuck this. Space Dude. To be honest, it very much looks to me like we grew too much too fast, and it takes a toll on everybody in the org, especially those most dedicated. In my personal experience, more on Discord, not the app. And more open discussion process before the decision making would help a lot. Naturally, that doesn't change who calls a shot at the end. It obviously takes time and energy, especially from you and the SOs, but in my opinion, the cost of growing to the size we are right now. Are you willing to take this into consideration? How far? Alright, I'm going to answer this question, Space Dude, and I'm going to respond with a question to you. It's, could you give an example of something that you would expect to be discussed amongst a wider org before a decision's made? Just so that I can see where your headspace is at there, because there's what I know some people want to have more org input on, and then there's stuff that I'm willing to have org input on, but I kind of need to see, you know, where your headspace is at. Like ship compositions, for example. I know there are people who want to use specific ships, and it's like, if it's a shit ship and the FCP is telling me that, you know, that's not good for flight combat, let alone piracy ops, then I'm going to make the decision right then and there without the input of the org. But I'll wait on your response there, Space Dude. I'll move on to the next one, and when I see your response, I'll come back to your question. Alright, Salamander. Are we going to brush on the issue that happened earlier this week when Dome was with the Ox and he called us for backup. It was denied. Oops, sorry. And shat on and not taken serious. There was a plan for it, Sal, but it kind of got eclipsed by this NA contingent leaving Mongrel Squad. So I'm going to be flat out honest. I wasn't particularly happy when I heard about this. That said, I haven't put in place a standard where we're expected, or Mongrel Squad members are expected to respond if auxiliaries get into trouble. And this is partially because of the casual nature of the auxiliaries and how we just let nearly anybody join. It becomes an avenue of approach for those who want to fight us, who are at war with us, to attack us, and essentially summon Mongrel Squad to fight. That said, though, the way that I saw Dome get treated was pretty piss poor, and I don't know, like, maybe you guys were joking around, maybe yous weren't. The problem that I have with that is it creates a level of toxicity later on, and as much, like, I don't think Dome's like this type of person where he'll go, you know what, those guys didn't help me, fuck them, next time they need my help I'm not going to give it. I don't think he's like that. But you could end up in a position where you do end up with someone like that, and that creates a level of toxicity there. There also needs to be an expectation of, a realistic expectation when it comes to asking for help. There's no harm in asking for help. However, you do need to be prepared to, fight the battle on your own. That said, if a fucking mongrel asks for help, you should really be going to help them. If you got the capacity to, go and help them. I didn't think I would need to make a ruling or, sit there and explain that to people. They're your org mates. Even if they're off, doing a operation with one of the sister orgs. If they're calling you up for help, chances are they really do need your help. Guys, just to make it clear, I don't want people shitting on Gluttony either. Like, he is still friends with people here. Whilst he didn't like the way that the org was going, doesn't mean that he's a bad person for that. Alright, here we go. Space Dude. I think just in general things should be orchestrated differently to give everybody a chance to voice their opinion. Ox are created. A push for more documentation to ensure Cho's consistent base skill set. Really, any initiative you or lead is going for, no matter how small. We got a town hall meeting similar to the org report. Just agenda is based on past, current, future changes, complaints, and initiatives. Maybe forum and text based. I'm still going to be very selective on the topics if I did something like that. Part of the reason why I don't push forward with things like that, Space Dude, is that I've heard, like, the differences of opinions already when it comes to changes that I'm making. You know, like, I do present things to the SOs and I get the opinions from them. And the reason why I go through them first is because they got a pulse on their own raider groups, and they're pretty spot on. Because normally, certain initiatives I will graduate to the JOs. The Mongrel Corps was kind of sprung on them. I did intend on trying to, you know, include them in the discussion for it, but I also put myself on a deadline, and then when I realized I was almost hitting it, I just went, alright, I'm just going to pull the trigger on it and let these guys know afterwards. That said though, like, I don't want to give the wrong impression when it comes to certain decisions that I make. So some of them are just going to be like, you know, this is the direction that the org's going in, irrespective of the input of the org. I know that's something that some of you aren't going to want to hear. You know, if you guys really do feel like badly about something, or, you know, strongly about something, you can voice your concerns, you know, through your officers, through your JOs, your SOs, directly to me. The fact still remains though, is like, I'm not making decisions in isolation a lot. The majority of the decisions that I'm making have gone through some checks and balances with the SOs. That said, I will consider it if, you know, purely because I wouldn't say that things need to change drastically, but, you know, I am hearing people are concerned that they don't get to have their say, or, you know, they don't feel like they're being listened to, and it's like, well, maybe I just need to sit there and listen to you guys, you know, draw on about something. You know, I present something to you all, you know, bring your points of view, and I make a decision, and then you can all get pissed off at me in chat all at the same time, and, you know, that's how it's done. The problem here is that Mongrel Squad is going to continue to grow, and not everybody's going to be happy with the decisions that are made. Carlos asks, I've been in and out. Have you mentioned the 319 changes to markets? No, and I don't know if everybody in the org's aware, but the shop data and ship data is no longer in the game pack files. So we're in a position now where we're not able to gain access to the information for the baseline of, you know, shop data, you know, where items are located, the quantities, and the prices. So we're looking at a tech solution of dealing with that. That said though, it's going to take some time. Carlos actually was working on a project for optical character recognition so that we could read screenshots of trade terminal screenshots, so that we can then update a database that was full of, you know, data on shops and commodity prices and things of that nature. That's been dusted off. That said though, like, there's no real push on Carlos to, you know, get it done urgently, but it is something for everybody to be aware of. So we're going to be relying on a bit of word of mouth information. Jack Axton's been sharing his data with us, which is great. Still isn't going to stop us from pirating him though. But that said, it's going to be a bit more finding where, you know, determining where the best places are to hit or find targets of pirate when it comes to trade commodities is going to be a bit more time intensive and labor intensive. Right, moving on. Next question, Salamander. Thoughts on the mindset that prospects are inferior and the ox is inferior to mongrels and above that I see growing in the org. We meme about it, but it seems some people are actually believing the meme and or using it as an excuse to shit on people they see inferior to themselves. I was going to meme on this, but I'll treat it seriously. This is one of those situations where can't control people's behaviors, but I can set, you know, expectations on the standard that I expect of people. And I actually have already done that. It's in, I believe it's in org information. There should be a post in those forums. Rules and expectations of Mongrel Squad. Yeah, prospects still haven't proven themselves to us. Auxiliaries are, you know, as Cashel pointed out, they're kind of like our little brothers. If people are, you know, seriously treating prospects and the auxiliaries as inferior and genuinely shitting on them and being malicious, they will be answering to me. And something that I want to make clear as well is that to the prospects out there, if you're watching this, if you do feel like you're getting bullied, you know, and it's targeted and it's malicious, you believe it's malicious, take it up with your officers. If you don't feel comfortable talking to them, you can contact me. Send me a DM. That said though, as prospects, you still need to prove yourself to us in terms of being able to meet our standards. As long as you're willing to continue pushing yourself forward, we will show you our way. But, you know, like, we're not going to hand you everything. And you might get a little bit of a ribbing if you make mistakes. But give people the benefit of the doubt, especially the members. But if you genuinely think that you're being, you know, maliciously targeted or maliciously bullied, you don't feel like you can talk to anybody else in the org, you can fucking talk to me. Oh. Really? You guys don't have any more questions? No one? Alright, Kath, enjoy your tea. Dastardly, do you think there's too much restriction in Mongrel Squad? You're asking the leader who makes the decisions on what we should and shouldn't do, so naturally the answer is going to be no, but at the same time, from what I hear, people want more freedom to do certain things. Or, you know, be able to put their finger in the pie, or, you know, have a bit more say in what's going on. I understand that. I ran wild guilds for years, and in my experience, whenever you start restricting and guiding stuff too much, people rebel and you get dramas. I get that. Part of what I try to do whenever I make a decision is I give a reason. I try not to sit there and, you know, lord over people, because I don't like that. So if I'm making changes or I'm creating extra work, I want to make sure that it's for a good reason. And that it's not just to make people, you know, do things for the sake of doing things. You know, it's not a power trip. It's not to try and make people, you know, feel inferior or you know, like, it's not really aimed at restricting people. It's to try and it sounds ridiculous when I say it like this in my head, but I'm just going to say it out loud. I'm creating these, you know, systems and putting them in place to try and help the org. my philosophy when it comes to, you know, increasing your skill in something is that if you're self-driven, you will improve faster if you have the right mentorship. And that's kind of the direction that I want to go in terms of how we train people in piracy. The reality is like, I've been looking at how we, you know, train prospects, you know, how we bring new people into Mongrel Squad and how we're training them up. And the game's just expanding. It's getting bigger. You know, like piracy got simplified, but it will expand again and we will have more tools at our disposal. And people are going to want to know how to use those tools. We're going to need a baseline of, you know, like this is what we expect everybody to know. And then if you want to know extra stuff, well then here it is here. Like I want to try and make sure that everybody's got the information that they seek available to them. If you're a part of this org, I don't want to withhold information from people when it comes to, you know, trying to be a pirate here. The only time I ever try and withhold information is to try and contain issues or, you know, like present opportunities without presenting spies the opportunity to be able to do counter ops against us. Because, you know, we always have to consider that there's a spy somewhere trying to spy on us. I guess, you know, like dastardly, I'll do the same thing to you what I did to Space Dude though. Like, do you have any sort of example there that you can think of that you feel like I've been too restrictive? When you type your answer out, I'll come back to it. I'm going to move on to Sorrel's question next, but yeah, I'll come back to your topic when you throw down an answer. Alright, Sorrel asks, there's been an air of, I'm assuming that means holding breath in the last 48 hours. Can we assure everyone that although recent events have been quite depressing, they aren't ignored and we can and will always learn from it, even if not seen straight away? On the back of that, is there anything the org can do to help our NA brethren or help in general? Alright, it's a two-part question, so we'll go with the first one. I am going to talk with Nick and I'll have a discussion with the JOs with regards to what happened, and I'll try and get discussions that propagate out amongst the raider teams to get their perspectives, because I know I presented this opportunity for people to ask me questions directly. It's in a public forum. They may not feel comfortable with it. They may prefer to ask, you know, within their little circle, because, you know, a JO may actually be able to answer the question without even getting to me, although they should really still pass it up the chain, especially with regards to recent events. The thing about this though is, like, this particular lesson is going to be hard to learn from, and I want to sit there and I want to tell you guys, you know, the details that I know about this. I don't think it's fair on those who were involved that aren't here anymore, because they're not here to defend themselves. And I do that at the detriment of, you know, lies being told about me. But I'm not gonna, you know, it's not that I'm not gonna stoop to their level, it's that I don't see the value in it. You know, like, I've always tried to be as honest and open with you guys as possible. I don't lie to yous. I may, you know, get things wrong on occasion of what I say, or don't remember what I say exactly. I don't know if you noticed, but I'm not that articulately spoken when I'm talking. I write better than I speak. But, you know, like, in terms of learning from it, it's not that I don't think there's lessons that we can't learn from it, it's that I don't think there was going to be anything that we could stop this from happening. As people have pointed out, we're growing. And I see this as part of growing pains. I'm not going to be able to keep everybody happy all the time. That's the reality. And to be honest, like, some people, unless you're doing what they want, they're never going to be happy with you. They're just going to bide their time. They'll sow dissent. And then when they see the right time to strike, they do. And there's not much that you can do about that. Or we can really do, like, you can't stop that. All you can really do is just continue pushing forward. You know, those who are willing to stick around, you know, talk with you guys, listen to what you've got to say, respond to your questions, keep moving forward. You know, even as Star Citizen is being developed at a glacial pace, it is still moving forward. 3.19 is going to be a larger patch for piracy. Cargo trading is being fucking, you know, essentially overhauled in terms of the commodity trade prices, which is huge for us. And really, we should be looking forward to that, and we should be excited about 3.19 and going in there and, you know, fucking pirating our way across Stanton, and be looking forward to that instead of what we're dealing with here. And there's one point that I want to say here. We had a talent drain. You know, like, it's no secret that the guys who left were, you know, some of our best. You know, best pilots, best FPS players, best, you know, people around, players all around. Our friends, you know, those who we, you know, enjoyed our time and had good memories with. But they're not the only people in the org. You still got the people that are here. Those who want to stick around. Those who are okay, you know, those who still, you know, want to continue building Mongrel Squad. And if that's, you know, what you want to do, you're not alone anymore. You're still not alone. So, you know, like, it's one of those situations where it's like, it sucks that, you know, people have decided to leave. I am also happy for them that they decided to pursue something that they enjoyed, as opposed to making themselves miserable for, you know, I would say for no good reason, but in their mindset, you know, like, wasting their time. And those who decided to follow their friends, like, I don't fault them for that. You know, like, they, you know, we all choose the people that we want to play with. We all choose the groups that we want to play with. You know, they made a choice. I'm not going to, you know, be upset at them for doing that. On the back of that, is there anything the org can do to help our NA brethren or help in general? I think that one should be left open-ended. And for those who are in the NA Raider group, you know, throw down your comments in the org report that this video is attached to, you know, to answer Sorial. Yeah, I'm going to close off questions. This is actually something that I wanted to do. So I'm going to close off questions down. Space Dude, you actually provided me an excellent segue here. So, Dobbs stepped down from SO for the NA Raider group. Well, you should all know that. He is still, in my opinion, but he was a huge influence to the success of the NA Raider group. And, you know, I'm extremely grateful that he, you know, stood up and took on those reins. And it wasn't easy. You know, he's pretty much been, you know, following me, you know, at my side bloody, trying to build up a capability, following my vision, being stuck in, essentially what was a middle management position. Shielding me from bloody some of the feedback that would come across, or filtering it so it was a bit more palatable. Giving honest thoughts and opinions, but still being willing to comply with the directions that I would set for the org, even when he didn't agree with it. It's going to be difficult to find somebody that will be able to fill Dobbs's shoes, but the reality is that I don't need another Dobbs, because we've still got him. He's still a part of Mongrel Squad. He's just going on a break. He's still going to be around. And, we shouldn't aim to replace Dobbs for the NA time zone. We should aim to, gain a new SO for the NA time zone. Somebody who is willing to, pick up from where he left off and continue to push forward, the legacy that he had set. But he's not going to be, whoever that isn't going to be Dobbs. They will be that new SO. I don't know who that's going to be yet. They may not even know. Not yet, anyway. But a large reason why, the NA Raider group has been able to grow and succeed, can be largely put down to Dobbs. And much to his, I'm trying to think of the right word. Much to his, displeasure, the NA Raider group wouldn't be the same if he hadn't been a part of it. But I know that he would agree with me on this point. Can't be that if he steps down, that it dies. That can't be allowed to happen. We're gonna have to, band together on this one and support the NA guys, support our NA Raider group, so that they can continue moving forward. So that they feel more comfortable with promoting the next SO. So I'm not going to lie, I was in comms with Dobbs when, the, for lack of a better term, Exodus happened. I was discussing with him at the time, him going on a break, de-stressing, thinking about what, his next steps are. And when this Exodus happened, it pretty much solidified his mind in what he was going to do. Part of me wants to blame those guys who left the way that they did. But at the same time, Dobbs is an adult. I've made it clear to him that if at any point he wanted to step down, he could. He always wanted to make sure that if he was going to do it, that he was going to try and leave the NA Raider group in a better position than what he got it in. Even, with the abruptness of him standing down, he had still achieved that. No doubt. Just give him some space. I know that a lot of you are going to want to, talk to him, reach out to him, show your support. Give him a bit of space. Let him come in his own time. Trust me. He is a pirate through and through, so eventually he will, the itch will come back and he will have to scratch it, and You know, just make sure that we're all there to throw him into a fucking turret, and when we're ready to board, bloody just send him in, and he'll dumpster on anyone fucking that's on that ship. But yeah, Dobbs, I really appreciate what you did for Mongrel Squad. Thank you. And yeah, we will get him a cleaver. We'll go into Vandal space just to get him one. Anyway, I'm gonna have to call it there for the org report, guys. If you do have any more questions, feel free to throw it into the org report, and I'll answer them in next week's the org report that this video is attached to, and I'll answer them in next week's org report. If it's about, you know, what's happened with the guys who decided to move on, you know, you got questions or, you know, queries or doubtful points, you know, feel free to DM me, take them up with your JOs. You know, if you're in the EU time zone, you can contact Nick. Just contact Nick regardless if you're EU or not. Anybody can. If you don't want to talk directly to me, you can go through Nick, you can go through the officers, like even the team 2ICs. You know, my DMs are always open. You know, you can send me a message. May not get back to it straight away. I will say this, if it's been more than a week, just give me a poke just so that I get the notification again, because I may have missed it. Alright. That said, you know, like, fucking 319 is around the corner. Fucking, it's gonna be a great time for piracy. I don't know about you guys, but I'm looking forward to it. It's not as, you know, what's happened isn't as bad as what, you know, it could have been. It's part of the growing pains. Don't worry, we are going to learn from this. I am aiming to stop this from this happening again, but at the same time, like, sometimes it's just going to be unavoidable. Anyway, that's it. Thanks, guys. I will catch you all around.